Voluntary citywide self-testing exercise kicks off today, but it's quite a challenge for some residents. Hong Kong's pandemic continues to stabilize with about 2,500 cases. Beijing approves John Lee's resignation as chief secretary, paving the way for his run at the top job.
Good evening and welcome. Authorities have kicked off a citywide self-testing exercise as the fifth wave of COVID continues in Hong Kong. Residents have been receiving SMS messages informing them to do rapid tests on themselves for 3 consecutive days and declare any positive results online.
The chief executive says the exercise will help identify asymptomatic patients in the community and cut off transmission chains. Christy Khan reports.
The 3-day voluntary self-testing exercise for COVID kick-started today. But some senior citizens carrying out their very first rapid test said the process was challenging. This man said he doesn't understand the instructions as they are all written in English. He added he doesn't know how to report his results online even if he tested positive. Some residents said they have not yet done the rapid test, although they know today was the first day of the self-testing exercise. This man said he will comply with the government's request as he believes it is a civic responsibility. The authorities said if people need help, they can go to community testing centers to take a PCR test instead. The health authorities urged people who test positive in the rapid test to report their results online within 24 hours. If they fail to do so but have special reasons, they can contact the authorities later via email or telephone. They are required to leave their HKID number and contact number for authorities to follow up. Speaking at the daily pandemic briefing, Chief Executive Carrie Lam urged all residents to participate in the self-testing exercise so that the city can return to normal soon.
If more people are doing the test, it would give us a better picture and also affect our decisions for the next steps. The nature of RAT is that we cannot mandate people to do it.
Lam also admitted there is room for improvement in the government's anti-epidemic work in the past 2 years. She added the fight against the pandemic requires public cooperation.
If people are not united, then the society as a whole will have to share the consequence.
Lam emphasized that the mass self-testing exercise offers Hong Kong an opportunity to cut off transmission chains in the community. Christy Khan, TVB News.
Hong Kong's COVID caseloads remain relatively stable, with the city reporting 2,492 COVID cases today. Among the infected, 8 are imported cases. Yesterday, 70 COVID patients died in public hospitals. They were aged between 45 and 101. The youngest casualty, a 45-year-old female patient, suffered from chronic illness. Meanwhile, the Chinese University's medical center reported the death of a 93-year-old male patient who also suffered from multiple diseases, including cancer.
Well, starting today, residents aged 60 and older can get same-day tickets for their 4th COVID jab at vaccination centers or public hospitals. The Center for Health Protection says people above 60 should get a 4th jab 3 months after their 3rd jab for more protection. They can get their jabs at 23 community centers and 13 public hospitals, while online reservations will be available starting next Thursday. Government Health Advisor Lau Yulong says people under 60 don't necessarily need a 4th dose.
If you are under 60 years of age and if you're healthy with no chronic diseases like cancer or kidney disease, you do not need the 4th dose. 3 doses are very adequate to protect you from having severe disease and deaths.
The State Council announced that it has decided to remove John Lee from the post of Chief Secretary for Administration on the recommendation of Chief Executive Carrie Lam.
Lee earlier announced his intention to run in the upcoming chief executive election if Beijing approved his resignation, and he said he will disclose the details tomorrow. Caleb Leung has details.
Around 4 hours after the State Council announced it had approved John Lee's resignation, Lee met with reporters at the Central Plaza office tower in Wan Chai, the building where he has set up his campaign headquarters.
I have worked in the government for 45 years. I have been taking part in different positions, which provided me with a lot of valuable experiences, knowledge, and abilities. It has also broadened my vision. I thank Hong Kong and the people of Hong Kong for allowing me to serve Hong Kong in these 45 years. I shall continue this passion to proceed on the way that I shall be proceeding.
Lee said he will be holding a press conference tomorrow.
Tomorrow at the press conference, I shall be explaining to you my next move. And my team will be announcing details of the arrangement of the press conference.
It is understood that some members of the election committee have already been invited by Lee's campaign team to nominate Lee to run in the upcoming CE race. On Wednesday, Lee announced he had tendered his resignation to Chief Executive Carrie Lam, adding that he intends to run in the CE race if his resignation is approved by Beijing. State media Xinhua News Agency reported today the State Council has decided on Thursday to remove John Lee from the post of Chief Secretary for Administration. The decision was made on the recommendation of Chief Executive Carrie Lam in accordance with the Basic Law. With Lee's resignation officially in effect, the CE said this morning she has nominated someone as the acting Chief Secretary. However, the appointment is pending Beijing's approval. Caleb Leung, TVB News.
Legislative Council President Andrew Leung lavished praise on John Lee today, calling him a capable and reliable person and an ideal chief executive candidate. At the same time, Leung said his office of the Legislative Council President is constitutionally neutral and will not openly support any CE election candidate. But he hopes the next chief executive can continue to improve relationships between executive branches and the legislature, sincerely serve the public, unite the society, resolve deep-rooted conflicts, and improve livelihoods in the city.
The political assistant to the Chief Secretary for Administration has quit. A government spokesman thanked Kathy Siu for her contribution and wished her all the best in her future endeavors. Siu, a member of the Democratic Alliance for the Betterment and Progress of Hong Kong, was a Central and Western District Councillor for 2 terms. She was among the government officials and lawmakers who attended Whitman Hong's birthday party at the beginning of the year. She later apologized for doing so.
Still ahead on tonight's news, the UN suspends Russia from Human Rights Council over its invasion of Ukraine. The United States confirms the first black woman to the Supreme Court. And 5 people are arrested for conspiring to make fake vaccination records.
Welcome back to TVB News. People in eastern Ukraine are rushing to evacuate ahead of an anticipated major Russian offensive. But for some, it's already too late. Reports say more than 30 people were killed today and dozens wounded in a Russian rocket strike on a railway station in the region.
Meanwhile, for the first time, the Kremlin is giving a sobering assessment of its invasion of Ukraine. As Russian forces pivot toward the east of Ukraine, the Kremlin admitted to Sky News today that Russia is taking more than an economic hit from punishing sanctions. It's also suffering significant and mounting losses on the battlefield.
Yes, we have significant losses of troops, and it's a huge tragedy for us.
Russia has said it withdrew its troops from the Kyiv and Chernihiv regions as an act of goodwill during negotiations for a truce. But the carnage being revealed is casting a growing shadow over ongoing talks. Investigators at Bucha have found at least 3 sites of mass shootings with hundreds of civilians confirmed dead during the Russian occupation. Moscow denies targeting civilians and claims the deaths in Bucha are a monstrous forgery staged by the West to discredit it. Meanwhile, more details are surfacing about Russian airstrikes last month that hit a maternity hospital in the shattered southern port city of Mariupol. After fleeing the city, the hospital's acting director said with just one strike there was nothing. It was simply blown away. This paramedic rejects Russian claims the hospital was being used as a Ukrainian military facility. Munitions experts say one of the explosions blasted a crater more than 2 stories deep in the courtyard, consistent with an airstrike using a 500-kilogram bomb.
The damage looks too extensive to be a single artillery round. It looks like the concussion was pretty significant.
Ukrainian leaders predict more gruesome discoveries will be made in coming days after retreating Russian forces left behind devastation that is drawing condemnation across the globe. NATO nations yesterday agreed to increase their supply of arms after repeated pleas from Ukrainian officials for heavier, more modern weapons, as Russia concentrates its forces for a major attack. The United Nations General Assembly has voted to suspend Russia from the UN Human Rights Council over alleged human rights abuses committed by Moscow during its invasion of Ukraine.
Meanwhile, the U.S. and European Union are levying various new sanctions against Russia. Daniel Rell tells us more.
The United Nations General Assembly has voted to suspend Russia from its Human Rights Council. This as the Russian military faces allegations of committing horrific rights violations during its invasion of Ukraine. The draft resolution obtained 93 yes votes and 24 no votes from the 193-member General Assembly. A total of 58 countries abstained, with 18 countries not participating. China voted against the move. Before the ballot was held, Zhang Jun, China's permanent representative to the United Nations, told the Assembly the resolution was not drafted in an open and transparent manner. He added the decision could aggravate division among member states, which would not be conducive to the de-escalation of the conflict in Ukraine and to advancing peace talks. Meanwhile, the U.S. Congress voted overwhelmingly to suspend Washington's normal trade relations with Moscow and ban Russian oil imports. The bill could facilitate the imposition of higher U.S. tariffs on other goods from Russia, such as steel and aluminium products. The White House also announced sanctions on Russia's largest military shipbuilding and diamond mining companies, the United Shipbuilding Corporation and Alrosa. The 2 state-owned companies' access to the U.S. financial system will be blocked. Alrosa is the world's largest diamond mining company. Elsewhere, the European Union approved new sanctions against Russia. The bloc will impose an embargo on coal imports, the first EU sanctions on Russia's energy industry since Moscow launched its invasion of Ukraine. The ban on coal is predicted to cost the Russian economy €4 billion per year. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, the EU's top diplomat Josep Borrell, and Slovakia's Prime Minister have now headed to Kyiv. They will reportedly discuss trade and humanitarian aid proposals with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky and his government. Daniel Rell, TVB News.
Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson has become the first black woman confirmed to the U.S. Supreme Court for life tenure.
In nominating Jackson, President Joe Biden delivered on a campaign promise to select the first African-American female to serve on the highest court, which was made up entirely of white men for almost 2 centuries. The 51-year-old Jackson will succeed Justice Stephen Breyer, who is retiring this summer. This report from NBC News.
A shared embrace today punctuating an enduring moment. President Biden in the White House with Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, celebrating the Senate vote securing her historic place as the first black woman on the Supreme Court.
This nomination is confirmed.
Now, for the first time, the court will include 2 black justices and 4 women, though the conservative court's ideological balance will not change.
A day like today that is so historic and so important for so many reasons, and I do believe is a very important statement about who we are as a nation.
Jackson's confirmation bipartisan, with 3 Senate Republicans joining all 50 Democrats. After 99 votes were cast, a 16-minute delay, lawmakers growing restless, waiting for Republican Rand Paul to arrive late. For President Biden, a legacy-defining achievement that keeps a campaign promise.
I'm looking forward to making sure there's a black woman on the Supreme Court to make sure we, in fact, get every representation.
Her confirmation following at times contentious hearings, with nearly every Republican voting against her.
If you're concerned about someone who uses their position to reinforce a progressive agenda, we should be concerned.
Jackson now getting a chance to fulfill that wish she made less than 2 months ago.
I can only hope that my life and career, my love of this country and the Constitution, will inspire future generations of Americans.
U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has tested positive for COVID-19 a day after appearing without a mask at a White House event with President Joe Biden. Pelosi is asymptomatic. She is fully vaccinated and has received the booster shot. She will now undergo a quarantine period. The House Speaker's diagnosis came ahead of her weekly press appearance on Capitol Hill, which was abruptly called off. The White House is now set to start a 2-week spring recess. Pelosi also postponed a planned congressional delegation trip to Asia that she was set to lead. Beijing had warned that it would take strong measures if Pelosi visits Taiwan on her trip, after reports speculated she had been planning to do so. In Sydney, hundreds more residents are being ordered to leave their homes, some for the second time in a month, as an intense weather system sparks flood warnings. Sydney saw more than a month's rainfall over just a few hours. One man died after his vehicle was swept away by floodwaters in the city's southwest. Police say roads are submerged while homes and businesses inundated. More than 4,000 residents are facing flood evacuations. Forecasters say rainfall has started to ease in most places, but river levels are expected to rise for some time. Australia's east coast has been hampered by 3 separate wild weather patterns in the past 6 weeks.
Back locally, the city's corruption watchdog, the ICAC, has charged 5 women for allegedly conspiring to make false vaccination records by pretending to have been jabbed in a community vaccination centre. The incidents took place in a community vaccination centre at Kowloon Bay Sports Centre. Quality Healthcare Medical Services was appointed by the government to operate the premises. Between January and February this year, Carmen Ho was assigned to the centre as a part-time inoculation nurse. To avoid any conflict of interest, Quality Healthcare prohibited any nurse working at the centre from administering jabs to friends and family members. But on February 22nd, just 4 days before the vaccine pass arrangements were fully implemented, 4 women who are friends with Ho, including 2 housewives, a private tutor and a primary school teacher, visited the booth where she was on duty. She then issued vaccination records to them without giving them jabs. Later on, supervisors of that vaccination centre recovered 4 syringes containing unused vaccine from the sharp box for placing used vaccine syringes in Ho's booth. Investigations also show that 2 of Ho's friends, Liu Hoyan and Cheng Ah-yi, had separately told her their worries about the side effects of the jabs and the restrictions they would face once the vaccine pass arrangements were in place. The 5 women charged with conspiracy to commit forgery were released on bail pending their court appearance next Tuesday for plea. The ICAC reminded residents that it is a civic duty to get vaccinated and the public should never resort to illegal means to obtain any false vaccination records. The watchdog added forgery is a serious crime and offenders would face up to 14 years in jail. Medical experts have found some children who recovered from the coronavirus have developed inflammation in different body parts. They are mostly unvaccinated. This medical complication is believed to be associated with COVID-19. The hospital authority said there are multiple cases involving young patients diagnosed with multi-system inflammatory syndrome a few weeks after having recovered from COVID. Among them, 7 children needed intensive care in hospitals. Health experts urged parents to let their children get vaccinated as soon as possible in order to reduce the risks of medical complications. That's the news. Thanks for watching.
Good night.